I got a call from President Clinton, who I had become friends with over many years, inviting me to come with him on an 8-day humanitarian trip that he was going to make to Africa and South Africa. And I thought it was an incredible opportunity. And apparently he was not having great success with getting people to say yes, because it wasn't like one night in New York. It was 8 days in Africa and South Africa. The fact that it was primarily to raise awareness and prevention for AIDS, and particularly for mothers who had HIV to get the medication they needed to not pass it on to their children. So I said yes, absolutely. And in September of 2002, we took off from New York and we went to Ghana and Mozambique and Zimbabwe and Rwanda and Johannesburg and Cape Town. And this was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. The doctors and nurses that we met, what we learned about how they were treating patients, the economic development that the president was also talking about in terms of Africa and where it was going to go in the future. The people we met, we spent a day with Nelson Mandela. Just one of the most extraordinary, just an incredible trip. Meant so much to me. And then the president was invited by Tony Blair to give the speech at Blackpool and the Labour Party conference that year.
I was there.
So we flew then to London. And the president said to me, before we leave tomorrow, you won't come? I'm going to go to Buckingham Palace tomorrow and see Prince Andrew. You won't come? So I said, sure. So I'm a part of the president's party, and there must have been, I think there were 21 guests of the Clinton Foundation when we went to Africa and South Africa. So it was like 18 or so people came to Buckingham Palace that morning. And we were wandering through, and there were people brought us into the throne room, and I sat down, and a bunch of people came and sat down next to me, and a bunch of pictures were taken. And then we went up and we met Prince Andrew. I'd never met him before and have not seen him since. So that's the context. Then President and I went up to Blackpool. In 2015, I started seeing reports online, things on my Twitter account that I had flown to this guy, Jeffrey Epstein's island, and I had abused young girls. And I was like, I mean, if you'd asked me in 2015, maybe even if you'd asked me in 2002, did I know a guy named Jeffrey Epstein? I probably would have said no. Well, of course, I have since learned who he is, and I have since been able to go back and find out that the airplane that we flew on for this humanitarian mission was owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And to then learn, oh, he was actually on some of those flights. And this Maxwell woman was on some of those flights. I didn't know him. I've never spent any time with him. I was with the Clinton Foundation people. That's who I was with. Now, what I understand is that he didn't start to be investigated until 2005 by authorities in Florida. So here's what I can tell you. This Maxwell woman, she was one of many people who sat down next to me in that throne room. I have no relationship with her. I had no relationship with him. I mean, he's not my friend. I'm not a confidant. I've never spent time with him. And interestingly, I will say this. I was very fortunate that President Clinton introduced me a lot of business leaders in London because he knew I was coming to the Old Vic. And I developed relationships with Robert Earl, Pula Ladobovich, Robert Earl, a lot of wonderful people, Sir Richard Caring, people who supported the work that we did at the Old Vic and gave money to us. Do you know who I never asked for anything? Was Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't want to be around this guy because I felt he put the president at risk on that trip to South Africa because there were these young girls. And we were like, who is this guy? So I will say this.
There were young girls on those flights?
There were young girls on those flights, yeah. And that's been out. They've talked about it. But here's my point. There's a big difference between not remembering that I met some guy and some woman on a humanitarian trip where my focus was entirely on what we were there to do, and not remembering whether I went to somebody's island. So I never went to Jeffrey Epstein's island. I did not know him, and I never saw him or her after that morning at Buckingham Palace. He didn't even come to Buckingham Palace. She was only there.
Is it true that Prince Andrew sought your assistance and wanted you to testify that Ghislaine Maxwell was your guest, not his, during that Buckingham Palace tour?
I heard a report about that, but at no time did anyone ever contact me on his behalf. And as I say, I'm not friends with him. I never saw him after that day.
What do you think about what's happened to him?
I mean, I don't know anything about it. It's not. I'm not going to talk about someone else's scandal. You know, my point is that I had enough accusations of my own to deal with. I don't need to inherit someone else's.
The person I'm told has been very supportive to you in the royal family is actually the king, when he was Prince Charles. Is that true?
That is true. We were very fortunate that when he was the Prince of Wales, he loved the Old Vic. He believed in it. His grandmother had been the patron there for many years. He came to see our productions. And I was always honored to be able to do what I could for the Prince's Trust. And I wish him all the best with his health.
And when your troubles started, when the scandal blew up, he did reach out to you?
No, I haven't heard from him directly, no.
But through other people?
That may be true.
Come on, Kevin, you'll know whether that's true or not.
Well,
he's now the King of England.
I do, but you know, when you start paying your guests, Piers, then you're gonna get the.
But he did contact you.
No, he did not contact me directly. No.
But he sent a message to you.
I heard a message, yes, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
A message of support.
Yes.
That must have meant a lot to you.
Yeah, but look, I don't want to drag him into all this. You know, he's.
Well, many people think it was a good thing for him to do.
Well, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying that, you know, he's got a lot on his plate, and I wish him the very best.
But it was a message he wanted you to hear.
I can't tell you what he was intending.
I don't think I'm getting the full story there, Kevin.
Well, you know, that's because you have your newspaper hat on.
Well, I've got my new YouTube hat on.
Your new YouTube hat.
Yeah. Because he knighted you.
He did. He did. I was very grateful for that.
Other people have had knighthoods taken away. That hasn't happened to you.
No, it has not.
Are you pleased that it hasn't?
I don't know why it would. But I can tell you that I was very touched by the fact that, because when the Queen was with us, and we're sad that she's not, there was always a day where she would do it. And it just so happened that I was working on that day. And so I guess what they normally do is they would mail it to you. But Prince Charles, King Charles, said, no, I want to give it to him. So he organized a ceremony at Clarence House that was a very, very moving day.
Do you remember what he said to you?
He was just very pleased that I had done the work that I'd done, and that Mother really loves what you've done with the Old Vic. It's wonderful.
Mother what?
Mother loves what you've done with the Old Vic. It's wonderful.
With the Old Vic,
yeah. Marvelous.
So you had the Queen's backing. Your work at the Old Vic. That's quite something.
Yeah, it was quite something. Yeah.
Are you a monarchist? Do you believe in the royal family?
I do.
How do you think he's doing? Obviously, he's got cancer, very sadly, at the moment, but he's still out there doing his duty.
I think that he has. I mean, first of all, I think that he has done such an extraordinary job. I think that it's been so wonderful to see that the British public has been so supportive of him. You know, a beautiful coronation, and he's, you know, he's in many ways the man he always was. And I think there were a lot of doubters, but if you watched what he cared about, what he fought for, the kind of work that he did with young people in education and the arts, all of these things that he continues to do, even though now the Prince of Wales is running the Prince's Trust, I think there's an enormous amount to admire about.
Have you written to him since he acceded to the throne?
I have written to him, but I haven't sent it yet.
Really? Why?
I just... You know, sometimes you're waiting for the right moment. But I did write to him.
Well, you're here in the UK.
Yes.
We're literally about 3 miles away from where he's probably currently standing.
Yeah, but I don't know that he opens his own mail.
Somebody will for him. One of the big things for you, obviously, Netflix, House of Cards, they basically froze your appearances in it and then froze you out altogether. What are your feelings towards Netflix?
Well, I haven't Netflixed and chilled for a while myself, but
You don't watch it anymore?
I just haven't. You know, I've just been
Really? You haven't
I've been
used
kind
Netflix
of, I've been
since?
kind of, you know, no. I think I've watched a few things. Certainly during the pandemic, I was watching, but I've just been a little too involved in other things.
But do you feel they let you down? So you're under the bus too early? Should have waited for you to get through the system?
I think that we had a really remarkable relationship, and I think that there is no doubt that House of Cards really put them on the map. And you know, even though they made the decision they made, which I think was a strange decision.
A wrong decision?
I believe it was a wrong decision. I believe it was wrong for them as a company. I believe that it put them in a position where then anyone who was ever accused of anything, they had to respond in a similar way. Although it does seem with Dave Chappelle that Ted Sarandos has learned to be supportive of controversial individuals.
Do you wish he'd done that for you?
I do wish he'd done it with me. And I believe that part of what ended up happening as a result of them, in a sense, getting rid of me so fast was they send a signal to everyone else. Well, they had this long relationship. They must know what's real. And they didn't know anything. And they didn't wait to find out what it was that might be discovered. And
Have you heard from Ted since?
No, I have not. And I hope that at some point, when all of the dust settles, because there's all these confidentiality agreements, I hope that someday the public will be able to see what it was that I was accused of on House of Cards and can decide for themselves whether it was deserving of losing that role and losing that series.
How supportive was your co-star?
I haven't heard from Robin.
At all?
No.
Nothing? Since when?
Since September or October of 2017.